In the quiet hours before dawn, the team at Skinwalker Ranch uncovered something no one was prepared for: a hidden underground tunnel system sealed beneath decades of Earth. It wasn't on any map, it wasn't in any records, and the moment they opened it, every piece of equipment malfunctioned at once, as if something inside didn't want to be found. What they discovered down there, the symbols, the footprints, the metallic chamber, changed everything. Before we begin, subscribe, because this story only gets stranger from here. The breakthrough came by complete accident. The team wasn't digging for tunnels, they were simply tracing an electrical anomaly near the East Mesa, trying to understand why their sensors kept detecting a low-frequency pulse below the ground. It wasn't the kind of interference that comes from pipes or buried cable. This was rhythmic, intentional, almost like a heartbeat beneath the soil. When the readings spiked into the red, Travis asked Thomas to bring in the ground-penetrating radar. What showed up on the screen didn't make sense. A perfect horizontal void, 12 feet tall, nearly 40 feet long, with straight edges and a consistent depth. Natural caves never formed like that. This was engineered, built, and buried on purpose. The strangest part? The cavity was cold. Not just cooler than the surrounding soil, but unnaturally cold, as if something was drawing the heat out of the earth itself. They marked the area, brought in the excavator, and began peeling back the top layers of dirt. The deeper they got, the more uneasy everyone felt. Even Eric, who rarely reacted to anything, mentioned that the EM spikes were behaving like they were aware of us. At one point, the excavator bucket hit something solid, and the metal teeth screeched so violently that half the team dropped their equipment and covered their ears. When the dust settled, a massive slab revealed itself, smooth, blackened stone, cut with laser-like precision. No tool marks, no erosion, just a seamless door-like surface that definitely didn't belong underground. Caleb tapped it with a pry bar, but the sound it produced wasn't hollow or metallic. It was something else, something deeper. That was when the air changed. A wave of static rolled over them, strong enough to raise goosebumps on every arm. The radio crackled with a burst of whispers. Not words, not language, just layered voices overlapping like an echo from another room. Thomas pulled his headset off and whispered, "Something's behind that wall." And for the first time all morning, Travis didn't argue. He didn't second guess. He just stared at the stone surface, jaw set, eyes locked, as if finally realizing they had uncovered something the ranch had been hiding for decades, maybe even centuries. Something built with purpose, something sealed for a reason. The team approached the slab with the same caution they used when dealing with high radiation hotspots on the ranch. Cameras were positioned, radiation counters calibrated, and a remote prize system was brought in so no one would have to stand directly in front of whatever this thing actually was. But even with all the precautions, no one expected the moment the slab finally shifted. As the hydraulic press pushed against the stone, the ground vibrated in a low, rolling pulse, almost like the ranch itself was reacting. The slab didn't break, it didn't crumble, it simply slid, as if something on the other side released its grip. Dust poured out in a thick cloud, and a cold draft pushed across the team. Not a normal cold, not earth cold. This was the kind that felt like it came from somewhere sealed off from the world for too long. The opening revealed a descending staircase carved into the soil itself, but the cuts were too clean, too geometric. Each step was exactly the same height. Each edge was sharp as though it had been cut yesterday. The walls were reinforced with an unknown material, not stone, not metal, something in between. And every flashlight beam that hit it reflected strangely, almost bending the light instead of bouncing it. Travis took a few steps forward but froze. His tablet, which had been collecting readings the entire time, suddenly dropped to 0 across the board. Temperature, EM spikes, environmental data, everything flatlined. Then the device rebooted on its own, flashing an error message he'd never seen before. Input exceeds parameter. It was as though the sensors weren't malfunctioning. They were being overwhelmed. Eric radioed down to the command post for backup, but all he got was static layered with faint tapping, rhythmic like a coded message. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2. Caleb tried his headset next. Same tapping, same pattern. The team exchanged looks, the kind they only give each other when something is truly wrong. But despite the tension, despite the unnatural cold and the overpowering silence coming from the tunnel below, Thomas insisted they continue. "We opened it," he said. "Now we need to know what's inside." Reluctantly, Eric set up the first ground probe and lowered it into the darkness. The camera flickered, then stabilized, revealing a long, sloping corridor that seemed to stretch beyond the probe's range. The walls were marked with strange patterns, not writing, not symbols, more like impression, as if something with claws had scraped along the surface while moving deeper underground. Then the feed glitched. For a split second, the image warped, and a tall shadow appeared at the far end of the corridor, motionless, impossibly still, and not shaped like anything they recognized. Travis pulled the probe back immediately. Whatever was down there, it wasn't alone. Once the shadow appeared on the probe feed, the team took a full 10 minutes to regroup. Even Travis, usually the first to push forward, stood with his arms crossed, reviewing the footage frame by frame, but the shadow didn't behave like a living person or even an animal. It didn't sway, breathe, or shift weight. It stayed perfectly still, as though it were part of the tunnel itself, or waiting. But they had come too far to turn back. If this tunnel system was intentionally buried, if it had been sealed with a precision-cut slab that reacted to their equipment, then the only way to understand Skinwalker Ranch was to go deeper. They entered in pairs. Thomas and Caleb went first, both armed with thermal scanners and shoulder cameras. Travis and Eric followed behind, each recording environmental data, magnetic field fluctuations, atmospheric ionization, radiation spikes, anything that might explain what they'd seen. The moment they stepped onto the first carved stair, the temperature plummeted, their breath fogged instantly, and their lights dimmed, not from battery drain, but as if the darkness itself was absorbing the beams. Travis whispered for everyone to keep calm and stick close. The walls emitted a faint hum, a sub-audible frequency they couldn't place, but could feel in their bones. 30 feet down, the tunnel widened into a narrow corridor. The markings they saw on the probe feed were far clearer up close. Deep gouges running parallel, vertical scratches spaced perfectly apart, and strange grooves, as though something had been dragged through the passageway. Eric crouched, running a gloved finger over one of the grooves. "This wasn't carved with tools," he said. "This is biological." Before anyone could respond, the radio crackled. Only this time it wasn't tapping, it was breathing. Slow, raspy, rhythmic breathing echoing through the headsets, even though the radios weren't transmitting. Caleb yanked his earpiece out, eyes wide, but the sound didn't stop. It was coming from the tunnel itself. Then the ground trembled. Just a subtle shift, like something massive had moved deep below them. Dust drifted from the ceiling, and the hum in the walls grew louder, almost resonant, like a tuning fork struck by an unseen force. Thomas pointed forward with his flashlight, focusing on the end of the corridor ahead, where the probe had caught the shadow earlier. There was nothing there now. The corridor was empty, but the air felt wrong, heavier, thicker, like something enormous had just slipped out of sight. Suddenly, the thermal scanner in Travis's hand flashed a warning. Massive heat signature detected. But when he pointed the device down the corridor, the temperature readings didn't show a creature or a person. They showed a handprint, a human-shaped handprint freshly pressed into the wall, still radiating heat, despite the tunnel being cold as ice. And the hand was nearly twice the size of a man's. The team followed the massive handprint deeper into the corridor, each step echoing like they were walking through the ribcage of something ancient. The walls narrowed, then abruptly opened into a large domed chamber, far bigger than anything the probe footage had hinted at. Their flashlights revealed smooth, curved surfaces that formed a perfect hemisphere, almost like the inside of a metallic egg. It looked engineered, intentional, and completely out of place beneath Utah soil. But what stopped all four men cold wasn't the size of the chamber. It was the light. At the center of the dome, hovering inches above the floor, was a pale, pulsing glow. Not bright, but alive. It swirled like a tiny vortex wrapped in thin mist, emitting a faint crackling sound, reminiscent of electricity climbing up a copper wire. The The glow wasn't attached to anything. No wires, no mechanical supports, simply floated, suspended in midair, as though gravity no longer applied. Thomas whispered, "This is impossible." Travis didn't answer. His face was locked in a stare of pure calculation, like he was trying to rewire the laws of physics in his mind just to make sense of it. Then the readings spiked. All of them. Radiation counters surged. Geiger meters chirped erratically. Magnetic sensors looped from 0 to maximum and back again. Even their watches, digital and analog, froze at the exact same second. Eric took a cautious step closer, his camera trembling in his hands. "The light, it's reacting to us." And he was right. Every time one of them moved, the swirling glow shifted, subtle at first, then more aggressively, like it was tracking their presence. It never expanded, never shrank, but it pulsed harder, as though whatever intelligence controlled it had suddenly become aware. Caleb's voice cracked as he whispered, "This looks like the portal footage, but real." The temperature dropped again, fast. The air grew so cold it stabbed their lungs when they breathed. Frost began forming on the chamber floor. A thin layer of ice traced over the metallic walls. Their breath came out in thick clouds. Even their clothing stiffened from the frozen moisture. Then the hum returned, this time louder, this time directional. It vibrated the chamber walls, rising from the floor like a sound born from the Earth's deepest caverns. Their radios exploded with noise. Not static this time, but layered whispers rushing outward like 1,000 voices pressed through a narrow gap. The swirling glow flared, once briefly revealing something inside it, a shape, long, thin, moving. And the moment it shifted, the chamber lights died, their flashlights flickered, and the pulsing glow collapsed inward, like a heartbeat stopping mid-beat. For a single second, the entire dome fell into pitch-black silence. Then something scratched the wall behind them. The scratching wasn't loud, just a slow, deliberate drag across the metallic wall behind them, but in the sudden darkness, it sounded like the entire chamber was being carved open. All four men froze. Their flashlights refused to power on, glitching like the batteries had been ripped out. The only light came from their equipment screens, flickering with corrupted static. Someone whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Only a second scrape, this time closer. Caleb lifted his thermal camera, and for the first time since they'd entered the tunnel system, he regretted bringing it. The screen displayed a patch of brilliant white heat, shaped vaguely like a human figure standing motionless against the chamber wall. But the shape was wrong. The limbs were too long, the torso too narrow, and the head was elongated, almost cone-like, tapering to a point at the top. "Travis," Caleb whispered, voice shaking. "Something's in here with us." The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. It just stood, as if waiting. Thomas reached for his sidearm, a reflex, though everyone knew a pistol wasn't going to do much inside a place like this. The temperature plummeted again, hitting levels that made their hands go numb in seconds. Their breath fogged the space around them, drifting like vapor from a frozen lake. Then, just as Travis leaned forward to speak, the thermal figure vanished. One frame, it was there. The next, gone. Eric spun around, scanning the chamber. Thermal doesn't do that. Things don't just disappear. They lose heat, gradually. He stopped, because something else replaced it. Across the dome, the pulsing light that had collapsed seconds earlier began to regrow. Not into a floating glow this time, but into a pattern. Thin, bright lines spread across the metallic floor, like circuitry illuminating beneath ice. The pattern formed arcs, then symbol, then something resembling a circular diagram carved in pure white light. It wasn't random. It wasn't natural. It looked designed. Travis approached cautiously, recording every detail. "This is responding to us," he muttered. "It's reading us, or scanning us." Suddenly, the entire chamber lit up with a blinding flash. The symbols surged outward, illuminating the walls. A circular opening, one that hadn't existed before, slid open in the metallic dome with a low mechanical groan, revealing a descending stairway carved into the earth. Caleb's voice trembled as he said what all of them were thinking. "This place, it goes deeper." And from somewhere below, far, far down the newly opened passageway, came a low, rhythmic thumping, slow, heavy, measured, like footsteps, coming up. The team stood at the top of the newly opened stairway, their lights trembling in their hands. The air drifting up from below felt different, denser, older, almost metallic, like breathing inside a sealed vault that hadn't been opened in centuries. Eric swallowed hard. "We shouldn't go down there," he whispered. But no one moved. No one argued either. Travis finally stepped forward, the weight of responsibility etched across his face. "If this thing opened when we approached, it's not random. It's responding. And if we leave now, we may never get another chance." His voice was steady, but his fingers were shaking. They descended slowly. Every step echoed into the darkness, each footfall repeating itself 2, sometimes 3 times, as if something below was mimicking them. The walls shifted from rough stone to smooth metal so polished it reflected their lights like a black mirror. Halfway down, the radio on Eric's belt crackled. Once, sharply. Then a voice whispered through, "Turn back." It wasn't any of their voices. Not distorted, not mechanical. It sounded human and terrified. They froze. The signal died instantly, replaced by a thick silence that pressed against their ears. Caleb checked the radio's frequency. Still on the team's private channel, impossible. At the bottom of the steps, the tunnel expanded into another chamber, smaller but colder, lined with curved walls covered in the same glowing symbols they'd seen above, except these were shifting, rearranging themselves every few seconds like a living language. "Are we inside some kind of machine?" Thomas whispered. Nobody answered, because in the center of the chamber stood a pedestal made of dark alloy, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, and resting on top of it, half buried in dust, was an object the size of a football, shaped like a geometric seed with interlocking plates. As they approached, the plates shifted slightly, releasing a soft exhale of cold air. It was waking up. The chamber grew colder the moment Travis reached toward the metallic object. Everyone's breath fogged the air, drifting upward in thin white strands that vanished before they touched the ceiling. Caleb stepped forward instinctively, but Travis raised a hand to stop him. "No one touches anything yet," he said, though even he sounded unsure. The object pulsed again, slow, rhythmic, almost like it was syncing with the heartbeat of the room. Thin lines of light rippled beneath its interlocking plates, running in precise patterns that none of them recognized. Thomas whispered, "It looks like it's listening." Then something happened that none of them expected. As soon as Travis's flashlight beam swept across its surface, the object reacted. The plates shifted, unlocking slightly with a faint clicking sequence, each click echoing down the tunnel like a coded message. Everyone stumbled back. A narrow slit opened along its center, no wider than a pencil line, but a beam of blue-white light shot upward from it, carving a perfect column into the air. Within that beam, symbols flickered rapidly, rotating and morphing like data being streamed in real time. Eric gasped, "It's projecting information!" But before Travis could analyze it, the entire chamber shuddered. Dust rained from above. The glowing wall symbols brightened, and the air filled with a low-frequency vibration that rattled their bones. The beam of light shifted direction, aiming itself deeper into the tunnel system, as if pointing the team toward something even larger, something the object was connected to. Then the pedestal beneath it emitted a low metallic groan. The plates of the object locked again, hard, sealing the slit shut with a final click. Whatever message it was trying to send, it wasn't finished. The moment the object sealed shut, the tunnel fell into an unnerving stillness, so complete that even the hum of distant machinery seemed to vanish. Travis steadied himself and aimed his flashlight in the direction the beam had pointed. The light hit a narrow passage branching off from the chamber, one none of them had mapped before. The walls here were different, smoother, darker, and lined with faint etchings that looked etched, not by tools, but by heat. Eric swallowed hard. This wasn't carved. It was melted. They moved forward cautiously, each step echoing in long metallic waves. The deeper they went, the more the air changed. It grew warmer, heavier, almost electrically charged. Soon the tunnel opened into a vast circular chamber, larger than anything they expected beneath the ranch. In the center sat a collapsed structure, part metallic, part stone, shaped like a dome that had been crushed inward from above. Caleb whispered, "Something fell on it?" But Travis shook his head. The impact didn't come from above. The pattern of destruction pointed outward, like something something burst out from the inside. Around the dome lay fragments identical to the object they found earlier, but older, scorched, and warped, as if exposed to extreme heat or energy. Some pieces pulsed faintly when they approached, reacting to their presence. Others emitted a soft clicking sound, eerily similar to the heartbeat-like pulses they heard earlier. Then they found the final piece, the one that explained everything. Etched onto a large, partially intact wall plate was a diagram, not written in any known language, but in symbols matching those the object had projected earlier. Travis analyzed the shapes, following the lines connecting clusters of symbols. His expression shifted from fascination to dread. "It's a containment schematic," he said quietly. "This whole tunnel system was built to hold something, not store it, restrain it." Before the others could respond, a deep vibration rolled beneath their feet, different from earlier. This one wasn't mechanical. It was rhythmic, alive. Silence fell among the team as tiny particles of dust drifted from the unseen darkness overhead. Then, from somewhere deep within the collapsed dome, a faint metallic scrape echoed, slow, dragging, deliberate. Something had survived. Something was still moving. Travis snapped his head toward the tunnel they'd come from. "We leave, now!" They didn't argue. The team backed away, flashlights trembling as the scraping grew louder, closer, almost curious. They rushed into the main corridor just as a low-frequency roar, so deep it hit them in the chest, rolled through the chamber they had just vacated. When they reached the surface, everyone looked shaken, breathless, changed. Travis didn't say a word. He simply locked the entrance, welded the gate, and ordered the tunnel sealed permanently. Later that night, long after the crew left the ranch, Eric returned to his monitoring station. A single sensor, placed near the tunnel's deepest point, lit up on his screen. Not motion, not heat, a pulse. Slow, steady, growing stronger.